When we start to think about repeatable processes, the question we're really asking is, what are the repeatable outcomes that I want to get? And so with repeatable processes, one of the key repeatable processes that we develop over and over in the Forge Mentor is the quarterly execution planning. Now, obviously quarterly, so it's at least 4 times a year. And then there's an annual planning process as well. So they're all regular processes. And so when we start to think what really matters in the quarterly planning process, it's interesting because very similar stuff that's in the annual planning process, which if you've read through the book, Unpacking Your Most Successful Year Yet, you'll find that we're talking about a 12-month success statement or a framework to get you somewhere. So what we're doing now is basically taking that and saying, okay, we've got this for 12 months. Now, what do we want to do this quarter? And so we would start in January. Some people start in December the year before, but we'd typically start in January. 1st of January, we'd be saying, okay, let's line out the next 3 months worth of work. And then we'll repeat that through the rest of the year in quarterly increments so that we get to a quarterly success space. And then we start to break it down even further. So let's have a look at the quarterly planning process and why is this a repeatable process? Okay, so it's absolutely essential that we do this. This is the whole key to the accountability journey. It takes it down to a reasonable bite-sized chunk. The idea then is that what you're doing is you're even in that quarterly process, you're taking everything down to an every 2-week deliverable. And then you could take every 2 weeks and turn it into weekly if you want to. As far as the accountability goes and what I typically work with clients, I'm saying, okay, I just want to see how you're going every 2 weeks. And that helps me understand. So remember, we're talking about objectives and key results. Objectives are the high level. We're trying to get after something. It's got a broad definition, but it's not highly measurable. And it has a whole bunch of key results underneath that measure the success. It's really interesting. Literally just cutting this video, I've just come off the back of working with a client where we worked through their first quarter objectives and key results. And it's interesting because whilst they didn't achieve the objective, they did achieve all the key results. And so we learned there's some other things in the market in that journey, and we're able to adapt and look forward to the next quarter as part of that. So the process of quarterly planning is we stop and we look at what did we do last quarter? How did we go? Okay, we analyze that. Is there something in here that is either too much, too little, or already done? If something's done, we celebrate the success. If something's too much, we dial it back a bit. That might be a number that you're trying to hit. If something's too little, we want to ramp it up just a little bit and say, okay, we can do more of this. And so that's the first thing we do is we're going to look at what's happened. We're going to look at the goals we've kicked. We're going to celebrate successes. We're going to analyze where we're at. And then we're going to say, how much of this needs to be then put into the next quarter? And there should be 1 or 2 things. Sometimes there's 1 or 2 things. Sometimes there's nothing. Then we're going to stop and go, okay, let's draw a line in the sand. That's the quarter done. Now we're going to do the same process for the next quarter. And we're going to set objectives and key results for the quarter, not for the whole year. They must fit inside of your whole year's objectives and key results. At the quarterly planning, there's a couple of processes that we normally look at. I've already talked about one in terms of getting you to the point where you're now looking at the next quarter. So the second piece then is, as I said, we're now saying, okay, let's step forward. If I look at all the objectives that I have for the next 12 months, I look at what I've done, look at where I've been at, what's reasonable for me to commit to for the next quarter? Okay, so as you get better at this, you actually get better at picking this and not overshooting or undershooting. So what's reasonable for me to do for the next quarter? Again, just looking at the work I just did today, it's not unusual. We just picked one objective and that's all we're going to do for the next quarter. There's so much in that objective that's all we're going to do. So that might be the case for you. You might have a couple, you might have 2 or 3, particularly they're smaller ones. What we're now doing is we're laying out this next quarter and we're saying, okay, in 3 months, here's 1 to 3 objectives I'm going to get. And here's 3 to 5 measurables that sit under those objectives. Remember, we have 3 months to do this. So don't go overboard. Don't give yourself too much that you can do, because you've got to break this down then into 6 2-weekly cycles. Okay. And so the idea of the 6 2-weekly cycles, whilst I'm not necessarily seeing those, if you're a client of mine, you are and your team are, and you can see where you're at. And the idea is we get into this mindset, which I love in processes, of doing things in sprints. We can see this ongoing incremental change. So there's some of the processes we do in quarterly execution planning. Quarterly execution planning is extremely important. We need to separate ourselves out. That's part of the process. We need to take time to do it. anywhere up to half a day, maybe day, depending on the size of your business and the number of people involved, and really work through this. Where have we been? What did we win? What did we learn? What do we take forward? What do we got to do next? And then that takes us through to the next quarter where we repeat the whole process again.